All right. Hello. Today is Monday, March 17th. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Welcome to episode 427 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Deputy Executive Director Martha Miller, and I'm joined today by NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson and my fellows, Morgan Pena and Jessica Jones. Today, we are diving into the latest U.S. military campaign in the Middle East, President Trump's airstrikes against the Houthis in Yemen. The administration has stated that this is about restoring deterrence in the region and protecting global shipping. But with the Houthis promising retaliation, we will have to see how far this will escalate. On Saturday, we launched a sustained wave of airstrikes on positions in Yemen. It's, I think been described as an overwhelming show of force meant to take out Houthis' capabilities, something the Biden administration had avoided in favor of more measured strikes. So this move follows 17 months of Houthi attacks on Red Sea shipping, which the United States and our allies argue have destabilized global trade and threatened international security. Why don't we get into it? Morgan, what does this mean for our overall Middle East strategy, and why is the administration acting now? I mean, the Biden administration, kind of did pinprick actions over that last year and a half. So why now? What's going on?
So I'm sure this is going to come as a huge shock to everyone, but this is not about the Houthis. These strikes are about Iran. I know, mind blown, right? So look, the strikes on Saturday were conducted solely by the United States, and they're nominally, according to Trump, intended to defend U.S. shipping lanes and deter terrorism. Okay, great. But what's the broader meaning behind that? So Iran is the main sponsor of the Houthis. Houthis are a proxy for Iran. They've been disrupting shipping lanes for well over a year now. They've targeted, over 100 ships, resulted in deaths, and a lot of resources expended by the United States. At the same time, though, I think it's important to note that President Trump actually redesignated the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization after President Biden lifted that designation in 2021. And so this also comes 2 weeks after President Trump sent a letter to Ayatollah Khamenei offering Iran a path forward on bilateral talks regarding Iran's nuclear program. So I think this really comes down to President Trump trying to negotiate with Iran from a position of strength, telling Iran that, hey, knock it off with your proxies. They're disrupting our free commerce and trade. We're going to go after you, right? You have an opportunity here to come to the table and negotiate with us, but we're going to do so by defending our U.S. national interests, and we're going to go after you and your proxies should you continue to be a problem and a thorn in our side. So maximum pressure is sustained and continuing under this administration. At the same time, though, President Trump wants to offer an opportunity to Iran to negotiate from a diplomatic position as opposed to military action.
Jess, do you agree? What do you think the strategic goals are of the Trump administration with regard to the Houthis?
I agree with Morgan. No minds blown that we're really talking about Iran here. It's clear that, President Trump has ambitious goals for his second term, right? And you can even just look at tariffs to see he wants to changing the government structure. Fundamentally, he has a vision for the U.S. and he doesn't want to be deterred. And so I think trying to put to rest some of the ongoing conflicts and tensions around the world. Let's solve Ukraine with the Ukraine conflict. Let's figure out the Middle East. We see his ambitious plans for Gaza, and now he's turning to Iran. And so there's the diplomatic, a letter to the Ayatollah, which is basically saying we've got 2 ways to deal with this. We can do this nicely, or we can do this the hard way. And a week and a half later, here's an example of the hard way. Like, we're going to come after you. And he's making it really clear.
So Lester. Yes. So is this just about Iran? Jess had mentioned Russia. They've been supporting the Houthis with weapons. Also, is this going to improve the situation in the Red Sea? Will this make the situation for international trade safer and more reliable, so that these shipping companies don't have to go all the way around Africa to move their goods? And what will Congress do?
Boy, great questions. So I think it's not going to be hard for the Trump administration to look tougher on the Houthis than the Biden administration looked, because the Biden administration kind of rolled in 4 years ago, took off the terrorist label from the Houthis for some utterly inane reason, and then all of a sudden the Houthis started attacking American and Western shipping. Then they had to go to a military approach and respond. Mild effectiveness there. I think it'll be relatively easy for Trump to look like he is being harsher on the Houthis. Whether he'll actually be able to demonstrably affect the situation militarily is another question, because these groups are hard to target. Yemen is a fraught place for a lot of reasons, but President Trump will look tougher. A couple of key points here. One, the Houthis are only targeting Western shipping that goes through the region. They are not targeting Chinese shipping. So China has effectively taken the side of the Houthis in this conflict, which, to Morgan and Jess's point earlier about this being about the Iran nuclear deal, kind of makes you wonder, the reason President Obama 10 years ago was able to get Iran to the table was because he had Russia and China with him. Now, that was not a super effective deal, to put it mildly. So how can President Trump kind of rearrange the chess pieces here to get to a point where there's pressure on Iran to make more concessions than they did 10 years ago? He's making an obvious move with Moscow already. What's going to be the move with Beijing to get them on side, if possible, on an Iran deal? If he can't get them on side, what kind of deal can you have with Iran anyway? So there's a whole bunch of hoops to jump through here before we get to an Iran nuclear deal. But then if you do get another one, if you get Iran, and by the way, the word they'll use is verified, as we have mentioned before. Very important that the deal be verified, he says, with his eyebrow raised. What will Congress do? The Iran Nuclear Agreement Review Act is still the law of the land, and any new arrangement with Iran would be subject potentially to congressional scrutiny. And I would say there's plenty of opportunity here to ask key members of Congress, what would your intention be if there is another Iran nuclear deal? Will you have hearings? Will you look at it? Will you consider resolutions of approval or disapproval? So this is really opening a whole can of worms.
Well, on that note, I think we can all agree that the airstrikes this potentially could be a defining moment in American policy towards the Middle East, certainly towards Iran. I think there is a lot to keep our eyes on in the coming weeks, particularly whether or not this maximum pressure campaign yields interesting results with regard to Iran. On that note, that is a wrap. Thank you to Kelly Crowley, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help producing today's episode. Join us on Wednesday, March 19th for another episode of Hotlines, NSI's podcast that gets you smart, fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. We're also on YouTube, so watch us, like, and subscribe.